Well, does that ever happen to you? Hopefully not in real life. In real life, I'm of absolutely no particular help at all. But if it's happened to you in Football Manager, then I am put together a list of tips to help pull yourself out of debt and make yourself some quick cash and sustain some long-term financial success. I'm talking about making it rain. But in order to actually make it rain, we have to find a way to get you out of debt. So how do you figure out that you are in debt or in financial trouble in Football Manager? You go to the finance screen. That part in itself is probably fairly obvious. If you look up at the top on your financial status, if it says okay, or even worse, insecure, or anything that sounds more ominous than that, that's like below the bar of okay, then you have a problem. You can see your overall balance, but a club, if you're like Barcelona, can have an overall balance of a couple $100 million disappear in 1 year without even buying somebody. So the balance in itself is not an indicator of how healthy your club is financially. It's more the income and outcome streams. I'm a big money guy. Expenditure makes a lot more sense than outcome. If you want to see those two things combined, you can click on projection and you see a basic projection of your club's incomes and expenditures. This is not a great indication of how well your club's doing financially because it does not factor in fairly important things like, competition revenue and player sales and those sorts of things that will keep me being very rich on my Twitch save, which if you want to watch is linked down in the description. Just click on that link. And if you don't have time or you want to catch up, there's also a live channel down there where episodes of each stream are posted. You watch the stream, then you watch the episode, and you are Oriental Dragon FC. That's the name of the team. If you want to figure out the income and expenditure that you're going to be working with, you can actually click on income and expenditure and then literally sort the sections. Like I made over $100 million off of player sales last year, but that's not the sort, that's the end of the line. We need to back it up to the beginning. When you're poor and you have no money and you have no assets, what do? Well, you still want to come here. It's obviously going to look a lot different, but you find out where you're making money. And much, much, much more importantly, when you are in debt, you find out where you're bleeding. Where is the money going? Now, there is no set rule for like how much money relative to the balance of your club you're supposed to be spending on wages. There's no golden rule that you can grab and reference when you are looking at this wall of numbers. But getting a feel for how impactful your staff salaries are, your player salaries are, and things like your youth setup and your ground maintenance. There's other things like your scouting costs. All of these things can be cut. And that's what you're going to be doing when you are in charge of a club that is in debt. You are going to cut things. If you've put yourself in debt at a club that has a lot of assets, then the obvious answer is sell a couple of players that are worth a ton of money to pull yourself out. But most of the time you're in debt, you're not going to be able to do that, at least not in the short term where you need to turn things around. So instead, what you'll do is you'll turn this into a contract sheet. And what I like, especially if you're taking over a club for the first time, you look at the agreed playing time. Who are supposed to be your important players, your star players? And then you cross-reference that with the reports screen. Which one of these guys is not appraised as being very good? Now, you never trust stars all the way. It's a good leading line, but then you can go ahead and click on the person and look at their attributes. If you have any doubts or concerns about how this player compares to somebody else in your team, go to comparison, drag down, and you can pick anyone from your entire club to compare this player to. And you will always, at every club you go into, identify players that have much higher agreed playing time, including this team that I've been managing for 12 years. There are players who signed their deal 3-4 years ago. They are not first team players anymore, but they have higher agreed playing time than their ability. You need to identify those players. If you're really in debt, that goes out the window too. If you look at your contracts list and you say, well, gee willikers, Batman, we just cannot afford the wage bill that we have right now. I am going to take the top 3 or 4 guys on this team and sell 2 or 3 of them, which is a bit of a misnomer. You actually don't need to sell the players. You can also loan them. But the beauty of a loan, you come here and you offer out a loan and you lock in the 100% salary. You don't care about the playing time because you're just trying to get them off the books, and you hit offer out the clubs. The beauty of that for the other clubs is they don't have to lock in to a 3 to 4 year contract, signing the person like you're selling them for free. They're locking in for 1 year and you're getting the wages off your books for 1 year. But when in doubt, a little transfer offer for 0 is also in play, especially if you're struggling to unload somebody. This is not something that you should be ashamed of, trying to empty out your wage budget. Players like Antoine Griezmann, players like Philippe Coutinho that used to be $100 million players get moved around in wage deals all the time, because when you have a gigantic wage or a much bigger wage than your actual ability at that time now, then there's a lot of value in just freeing up that money to move around by loaning somebody out to Bayern and then having them beat you in the Champions League. It's amazing what can happen. That was a special case. I never got confirmation on this, but one of the best things I heard was that in a clause, Barcelona buying Coutinho from Liverpool, it said if he wins the Champions League, they have to pay Liverpool like $2 million, and he won the Champions League, but not with Liverpool, or he won the Champions League, but not with Barcelona, so they like still had to pay the clause. I don't know if they actually ended up paying it, but that was like Liverpool came calling like, hey, Coutinho. Try and avoid that, and there's lessons to take in avoiding debt-riddled situations on Football Manager from that Coutinho situation. But unloading major contracts or identifying players on big contracts they don't deserve and then offloading them with low sales or loans is a great way to stem the bleeding immediately. That bleeding could be happening because of weird things that are included in contracts. When you look at contracts, there are oftentimes significant bonuses. I mess around with bonuses a lot because I know my club is really healthy financially. We're going to be able to stomach it. If your club is not healthy financially, don't just look at the wages, look at the bonuses, especially if you put them there. Because there's two types of debt here. There's the debt you've created, and there's the debt you have adopted by taking a job. Either one, these bonuses are a mess. And when you're negotiating a new contract, it can be really addicting to go in here and make them accept the deal by saying, I will pay him $30,000 a goal and $30,000 an appearance. That stuff is coming out of your balance too, right? This isn't FIFA. You're not just playing off a wage budget. You're playing with a dynamic, full balance sheet. So don't mess around with that stuff unless you know what you're doing. If you feel like you're bleeding a lot of money on players and you're in debt, it could be worth looking at the contract situation of each of your players and finding those hidden large bonuses that could be squeezing some extra cash out of you. It'll pop up on the expenditure sheet too. If that number is a lot higher than you think it should be, there's some bonuses hiding. Right here. $300,000 for team of the year. That could bankrupt a tiny club, which is why a tiny club would never. Anyways, this whole strategy of unloading players is actually not the only thing that you can do to immediately lessen the amount of money that your club is spending. When you join a club and they're in debt, you have the ability to mutually terminate with any member of the staff. This means you are paying them less money than they would make in the full duration of their contract. You are saving your club money and getting rid of that person. I'm going to say this right now. I always talk about how you should fill up your staff. Don't. If you are in debt, don't. Go to your training, go to coaches, and go to edit coaching assignments. If you are able to handle the workload, which means it's like light or average in the preseason, physical fitness is going to be really difficult, or when you're training something in particular that's focused on one of these things, the workloads will vary throughout the season. You don't need all of your coaches. If you've got that covered and you don't have the money to afford all the coaches, just get rid of some of the coaches. You don't need them. You don't need your director of football / general manager right here. You can turn that into a 0 out of 1. I don't have a loan manager and technical director ever because I just do those jobs on my own. I'm not going to spend the money to have them. They're very expensive. If you're a much smaller club, you don't need scouts. You need one to scout the opposition, and that's it. You're going to do all the scouting manually through trials and end of contract stuff. Don't spend the money on them. The only things I wouldn't cut the corners on is you should have an assistant coach, you should have at least one scout, and you should fill out your physios. Everything else is worth cutting a corner on, even the head of youth development. If you're a tiny club, nobody cares. Your youth intake is not going to be important anyways. It's not going to help you out. It's always a crapshoot. And heads of youth development usually ask for top dollar compared to your staff. And this also runs down to youth teams, because you come over here and you go to your dev center, or if you take control of youth team training, it'll pop out to the side as well, and you can click on the team here and go to staff. With this save that I've been doing on Twitch, I did not have a U23 or a U19 staff at all until I got to the top flight. I didn't have a staff at all. Zero. Or B team. I had the option to form a B team. I didn't do it. No point. I wasn't financially sound. We didn't have any of the coaches. And you know why we were able to do that? We didn't have a freaking youth team. If you were in debt, the smaller your club is, the less you should have a youth team. Because, okay, depending on what country you are in, there will be a minimum wage. There always is. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing because money's nice. But that minimum wage, whether it's $15,000 a year, $7,000 a year, $4,000 a year, or whatever wage of 10, 15 you're paying these young guys to stay around, that is a lot of money, right? If you fill out an entire youth team, an entire U23s, and an entire senior team, even if you're paying over the rest of the team's chump change, right? The younger guys getting chump change, that's all, you pile up enough chump change, you have legit change. I did not have a U19s or a U23s until I got to the top flight. 3 promotions, all the way up. It's okay. It makes sense. There's no adverse effect to the game, right? If I had a great player for my youth intake, boom, came up to the first team and hung out with them. That was it. And there were like 2 of those. And neither of them was actually good. They were just good enough to stick around. That was it. That was all we did. No coaches, no players. All of the money into the first team. No debt. This wall, you don't need it. And that right there, looking to loan or transfer all of your youth players, reducing the size of your staff, and cutting out contracts that you don't need and or can't afford for your most expensive players, that can save you a ton of money and single-handedly get you out of debt when you're in a bad situation. There is also the time-honored trick of scheduling friendlies against bigger teams. Now, this is something that I haven't necessarily had a ton of success with, but it is possible to raise not an insignificant amount of money by scheduling a friendly. Like if I go here and I look to schedule a friendly match, and then I find a smaller reputation team foreign like Raja Casablanca, and I look to play this match, I could make $25,000, $30,000, $35,000. Be careful here, though. It can trash your dynamics. If you are Lincoln City and you decide to play Liverpool every weekday, your dynamics are going to be abysmal. Your team happiness and everything, because you're losing 12-0 every game. I mean, honestly, Lincoln City would do much better than that, but you understand what I'm saying. This would go from all the way, hey, sparkly fun and ponies, to death and destruction. That can destroy your club much more than debt sometimes. Another quick way to instantly make cash appear is if you're taking over a club, oftentimes they will already have these sorts of player packages that have been purchased. If you go to player search, you'll see like recruitment package. Just get rid of the freaking recruitment packages. You're investing money in that stuff that you don't have. It'll take it off the bill and you can just go back to trialing and signing free players until you're back on your feet again. But the secret to long-term financial health is always player sales, especially if you're building a club up significantly, where you're trying to build a new stadium, build the infrastructure, build the fan base. Competition prize money is going to help, but in every save I've ever succeeded at, a vast majority of the money I've made has come from player sales. If you are not managing Barcelona, United, PSG, right, you do not have the financial backbone to spend. You have to be a selling club. And how do you do that? You sell high and buy low. Nothing can single-handedly change the financial fortune of a club faster than a big player sale. I don't care if it's your best player. I don't. If you are $500,000 in debt with no immediate way to get out of it, and your best player gets an offer for $2 million, you should take it. I know it hurts. It's painful. You kind of want to cry a little bit. But you have to do it. You have to. The club is bigger than the player, even in Football Manager, man. And once it gets to this high level, I had $100 million in player sales and $82 million in player purchases. I made $23 million, and I think our team, $21 million, roughly. Math. On this episode of Zealand Hates Math, he misses by a mere $2 million, far better than his usual performance. But this all started because I signed a guy for free and Portsmouth came in with $2 million. And I went, okay. I sold him for $2 million. I found a 16-year-old because I'd started to build up my scouting program again. And I'm looking over here. I'm looking for him. And that 16-year-old is now valued at $45 million and has received offers as high as $80 million. We bought him for $1.8 million. Financial health of the club secured. Just that one move. We sold Thiago News. We bought Ja Silva. That's it. Sometimes it won't be that simple, but that sale of Thiago News finally gave us an actual balance to work with and an actual transfer budget for the first time, which we got really lucky. We played against this guy win a cup, and he was out there and he was 16, and we went, But that's the long-term stuff. If you are in debt, take all of the emergency steps that I just mentioned. I'm sure people have other quick tips about how to make money. Feel free to throw those down in the comments. It should be a treasure trove. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on stream, and have a fabulous day. Keep it easy, breezy, and beautiful.